Are you training your shoulders like a dead person? You might want to watch this. So my last video, I talked about, are you training your body like a dead person? And I basically explained that a lot of the anatomy that is well known and mostly mainstream understanding has to do with studying anatomy on cadavers. People who are no longer living and breathing and moving with blood pumping through their veins. And so it's important for us to understand that our muscles respond based on the context of the task that we're performing, which means, a simple explanation would be your hamstring. Everybody knows that it's, attaches at the knee and the hip, or below the knee actually, and at the hip, the ischial tuberosity, the butt bone. And so a lot of people are training their hamstring like this. They're pushing against resistance, they're using a machine at the gym, or they're laying on their stomach and they're lifting their leg like this to shorten that hamstring and contract it in a concentric contraction, which is when it shortens, to see if they can get their hamstring stronger. Now, yes, they might create some hypertrophy, they might create some muscle growth there. You wear out the tissues enough and they break down slightly and then they rebuild stronger, ideally. That's the goal. However, is that really the job of the hamstring? To shorten the knee? I mean, how many times in your daily life when you're standing do you do this? It's not a real functional movement. So the hamstring must have some other job, which it does. And I've got some videos on not training your hamstring like that. So I'm not going to get into that in this one. I figured I would explain more about three-plane function, because when we're looking at a muscle where it attaches and we just want to shorten it when we exercise it, like the last video I talked about the bicep, everybody wants to shorten the bicep and isolate it and not allow any other body part to do anything, because that would be cheating, and it's so inauthentic and so not real human life. But yep, that's how we train, and that's how we end up with tendinopathy and tendonitis and all those nasty things that we don't want when we work out. We work out to be more fit, not to be injured, not to have pain, not to create problems. So the shoulders, I thought I would show the shoulders in this one because we want that three-plane function in the shoulders. So how we're going to do that is we are going to use three planes of motion, but we're also not going to isolate and say, I have to make sure I don't use any other body part. And a lot of the times when we're training our shoulders, we're sitting down, we're doing an overhead shoulder press, which I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's only one plane of motion. And the rest of our body really isn't involved. We're just pushing up. So, think of this as being a machine. Of course, you can do this with weights as well. And we're just pushing up, working the top of the shoulder. Now, your deltoid muscle, which is what gives that big definition there, you've got anterior, lateral, and posterior. You've got three different ones, front, side, and back, heads of your deltoid muscle. And a lot of the times people will do exercises where they want to build the anterior delta or the front. And so, you're lifting this way and you're wanting to work the front, or you're going out to the side and you're lifting that way, or you're going backwards to work the back deltoid. Ideally, and then again, we're not allowing the rest of the body to play a role in that. Ideally, what you want to do, because shoulders are notorious for having issues, for a couple of reasons. One of them has to do with the fact that it's the most mobile joint in the body. There's no other joint in your body that has this much motion. Your hip is the second most mobile joint, but your leg won't do what your arm will do. And so that makes it a little bit more at risk for things. It's a non-weight bearing joint, unless you're doing push-ups or something, like that, or planks. It's pretty much a non-weight bearing joint, and you could do pull-ups, but that's not weight bearing. And so because of all of that, and the fact we've got our rotator cuff muscles, of which there's 4, but there's 18 muscles that directly impact the function of the shoulder. So rotator cuff is only 4 of those, and most of us are, we're taking the TheraBand and we're pushing out against resistance. We're working those external rotators because we just want to train that rotator cuff. And the problem with that is the rotator cuff muscles are really designed to stabilize the shoulder joint. They are not designed to provide the strength and the power and all of the things that we use our arms to do. So they're just meant to keep that arm bone from dislocating from the joint, because it's a very shallow joint, which is why it's so mobile. So here's the deal when it comes to strengthening and exercising the shoulder joint. Ideally, we want the entire body to be part of the equation, because that is authentic human function. And we want to train in all 3 planes of motion. So I'm going to show you what that means. Also, sitting, you're probably better off to do it in standing, because now your whole body can be part of the equation. So if I go to lift something up on a shelf overhead, I am not just saying, oh, I better only use my anterior deltoid. I better not use any other part of my body. I better make sure I have perfect form. That's not real life. It's not authentic. Your body moves in all 3 planes of motion no matter what you do. And the 3 planes of motion are moving forward and back, side to side, and turning or rotating. So you can train your shoulders in all 3 planes of motion, and you can use the whole body to be part of the equation, and your shoulders are going to love you for it. You're going to be much less likely to create tendonitis or bursitis or all of those things that aggravate us because we're trying to isolate and just abusing a joint to cause harm and problems. So let me show you. If I am going to do 3 planes of motion, one of them would be going forward, because the forward and back is one of those planes of motion. So I would go forward, and how I would get my whole body involved would be to do just a little bit of a kind of like a tiny little mini squat, just to sort of wind up, and then push through my feet as I come up, and then come back down, and then do the other side. So alternating is good. You can do both sides. I like to alternate, because if you've got a little difference in strength side to side, it helps to adjust for that. So I'm just going to push up forward and push up forward. Now, it's not just forward, that one plane of motion, it's also backward. So we could do backward as well. So I'm going to come up, and I'm going to go up behind me, and I'm going to go up behind me. And what I'm doing here is I am building the shoulder in that plane of motion. It happens to be sagittal plane. So that when I go forward, I'm using a little bit more back shoulder, and when I go back, I'm using a little bit more front shoulder, but my whole body's involved because I'm pushing through the floor with my feet. My shoulders are happy because they're not trying to do this without a team effort. If I was to push something heavy up overhead, I'd be using my whole body. I wouldn't ask my deltoids to do it all by themselves. I wouldn't be training like a dead person. So that's how we want to train. Now let's add the side to side, or the frontal plane motion. So there we're just going up sideways. And to get the whole body involved, you're going to get your pelvis under that side of the shoulder that's going up. So you get this beautiful motion, and you can use some pretty heavy weights if you're capable and it's appropriate and you're not going to injure yourself. But you're getting that weight under there. You can still build muscle. You can still build strength, but do it in a way that's much less likely to cause injury. Now, there's also 2 kind of motions that occur in that frontal plane for the shoulders. So it's not just going up to the side, but we can also cross over the head. And so each one of those motions, whether you're going up to the side, which, it depends on how comfortable it is. You could go out a little bit ways. And it doesn't really matter what direction your hand is in, if you want to have it like this or like this, whatever's most comfortable. I'm still feeling my shoulders work when I do that. And when I'm going out to the side, I'm working the back shoulder just a little bit more. And when I'm going across, I'm working the front of the shoulder just a little bit more. But again, I'm not isolating, and I'm not asking the shoulder or the deltoid or any other muscle in my body to work without any assistance from anything else in my body. And then, of course, we've got rotation. Now, for rotation, you want to kind of wind up a little bit so that the whole body can be involved again. So I'm going to wind up and I'm going to go forward, but I'm rotating my body. So I'm still pushing through my feet, which my shoulders love, but I'm rotating. I'm turning as I do this. Doing that rotation in front of my body is going to work a little bit more the back of the shoulder. What about working a little more the front of the shoulder with rotation? For that, I'm still winding up, but now I'm going to go behind me. I'm turning and I'm going up. Your shoulders can feel fabulously strong and fit after training them in all three planes of motion without isolating, which is not physically possible anyway in the human body because it's a physics thing. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So I can't just work my anterior delt without some other part of my body having to stabilize me and create an opposite movement with force. So why do we try to do that? Where did that ever come from? I don't even know. I mean, I don't think I'd be able to find that out in the history of fitness and exercise, where we got the idea we could isolate a muscle and not allow any other part of the body to be involved. That's what creates most of the harm and most of the injury, most of the itises. And I've seen this for years in a clinic setting. So hopefully this makes sense to you. Hopefully this helped you. Please go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber so you'll get an announcement of when the next video in this series of not injuring yourself in the gym. And as we get older, a lot of the times people say, oh, I'm more prone to injury because I'm older. Guess what? It's not your age. It's not the number of years that you have lived on this earth. It is how have you lived them. That's what matters most. So I hope this helps and have a great workout. We'll see you next time.